Port authorities are bracing for a major impact. According to Port of Seattle Commissioner Ryan Culkins, there could be a 40% drop in vessels.
The United States will soon face likely supply chain issues as the last.
America's ports are bracing for impact. According to the Port of Seattle Commissioner Ryan Culkins, there could be a 40% drop in vessels and container traffic over the next few weeks, one of the lowest levels on record. This isn't just a temporary slowdown. It signals something deeper. A shift. For decades, the United States was the nerve center of the global economy, the place through which goods, energy, and information naturally flowed. Every trade route, every supply chain, every investment, all roads once led through America. But in 2025, that map is being redrawn, and the new coordinates, they're pointing north. According to the Global Trade Monitor and the Peterson Institute, more than $700 billion in global trade is quietly shifting out of the U.S. and into Canada. This isn't speculation. It's already happening across 5 major sectors that underpin the 21st century economy. $120 billion in battery minerals and electrification components, $76 billion in cross-border energy, $89 billion in agriculture exports, $61 billion in AI and data infrastructure, $68 billion in shipping and container logistics. Ask yourself this. When did Halifax replace Houston? When did Toronto outpace Silicon Valley? While Washington debated tariffs and political slogans, Canada was building infrastructure and trust. The U.S. isn't just losing contracts, it's losing control. In Q1 of 2025, Canada's GDP grew by 5%, driven by mining, oil, and for the first time in years, manufacturing. Meanwhile, a quiet transformation was underway, one that would affect the phones in our pockets, the cars we drive, and even the energy that powers our homes. Let's talk batteries. Because if trade is the body of the global economy, batteries are its bloodstream. For years, the U.S. seemed ready to dominate the EV revolution. Tesla in California, Ford in Michigan, Panasonic gigafactories nationwide. But in 2025, that assumption collapsed without warning. The trigger, a little-known piece of legislation passed in Ontario, Bill 142. No ban, no tax. Just one requirement, government approval for exporting 11 strategic minerals like lithium, cobalt, and nickel, vital for EVs and defense systems. Result? 63% of cathode orders bound for the U.S. in April and May were either delayed or canceled. Companies retooled their production for European markets. Toronto became a hub for contract renegotiations. Halifax, a sleepy Atlantic port, was transformed into a cold chain battery export terminal for shipments heading to Hamburg and Rotterdam. And the U.S.? Cut out, not by hostility, but by efficiency. Michigan's battery component suppliers started laying off workers. Factories in Ohio and Indiana saw Q2 sales plunge by over 20%. Even Apple's diagnostic tech partners in Pennsylvania had to reroute operations to Asia. And it didn't stop there. The price of nickel sulfate surged by over 40% per ton. On the Ford F-150 Lightning now costs $3,200 more, while the same model built in Europe powered by Canadian minerals held its price. The Peterson Institute estimates that in 2025, the U.S. will lose $38 billion in direct battery manufacturing value, not even counting downstream losses in EVs, electronics, and defense. And it wasn't a boycott. There was no war. It happened because Canada controlled the upstream. So here's a question for you. What happens when your factories have nothing left to run on? Scene transition electricity crisis. In the summer of 2025, Americans noticed another change, not in policy, but in their power bills. Across New York, Michigan, and Minnesota, electricity costs jumped by 20 to 25% overnight. Oh, no blackout, no demand surge. So what happened? Canada happened. For decades, Quebec and Ontario quietly powered the U.S. Northeast with cheap hydroelectric energy. But after Washington imposed new tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum, Canada responded, not with speeches, but with prices. Cross-border electricity rates surged. American utilities paid the price. And Canada? It looked elsewhere, signing new energy contracts with Ireland, Belgium, and the Netherlands. Long-term, stable, reliable. The price, nearly twice what the U.S. had been paying. And it gets more serious. Canada is now building a transatlantic ultra-high voltage cable from Churchill Falls to the Irish coast. Once online in 2028, it will bypass the U.S. entirely. At home, Americans are feeling the heat, literally. Seniors in Detroit are rationing air conditioning. Small businesses in Buffalo are cutting hours to save on power. Meanwhile, Canada is investing those billions into its own future. Who really holds the switch now? Global food markets are shifting too. For the first time in 30 years, Japan chose Canadian wheat over U.S. supply. South Korea inked a beef deal with Calgary. The EU boosted Canadian soybean imports by 40%. And why? Because they no longer trusted the U.S. to deliver. Labor shortages, driven by immigration crackdowns, left fields in Nebraska untouched. Over 1 million tons of corn unharvested in California. Fires broke out in the fields, not from climate change, but from abandonment. And while American farmers watched contracts disappear, Canada broke records. $89.2 billion in agri-exports in just 6 months. The food in Tokyo and Rotterdam now reads Canada grown, not made in America. Some losses aren't visible. In the digital sphere, Canada is now the new AI frontier. In 2025, global tech investment in Canadian AI jumped 31%. The U.S. trailed far behind at just 6%. Google expanded in Toronto. Engineers from India, Europe, and even California moved north. The reason? Stability, trust, and regulation frameworks that work. Canada's new digital accord with the EU created a secure zone for AI and data. Result: Canada now controls $61 billion in AI infrastructure. Meanwhile, the U.S. still has talent, but talent is crossing the border. What good is coding an algorithm if you can't export the product? Seen transition trade and shipping. In the first half of 2025, U.S. container traffic dropped 12.7%. Canada's ports? Up 26%. Shipping giants like Maersk rerouted vessels from Seattle to Vancouver. And CPKC launched a seamless Mexico to Halifax rail corridor, bypassing Chicago and cutting shipping times by 5 days. That one decision cost America $22.5 billion in lost port revenue, 27,000 jobs. And here's the part that hits home. Battery workers in Ohio? Laid off. Engineers in Seattle? Updating LinkedIn. Farmers in Iowa? Losing buyers overnight. Ask yourself, is the U.S. economy just shifting, or is it being sidelined, closing music builds? Because if batteries no longer pass through Detroit, if power no longer flows to New York, if AI is built in Toronto and food in Tokyo comes from Saskatchewan, if the container leaves Halifax, not Long Beach, then what exactly does America still lead? Leadership isn't a flag. It's not a slogan. It's the ability to deliver, on time, at scale, without question. And right now, Canada is doing just that. One corridor at a time, one contract at a time. This isn't collapse. It's a quiet handover. So the question is, did we notice in time? Because the next corridor may not be a shipping route. It may be digital currency. And it's coming fast. If this changed the way you see America's global role, like the video, share it. Subscribe to follow the next wave of silent realignments across trade, tech, and power. And tell us in the comments, is the U.S. still leading or already being replaced? The future is moving. The only question is, are we?